Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Today is Monday, June 23rd, and this is your Arkansas Daily Briefing. We are going to start with politics because there's a lot going on, so we're pretty much going to stay there for most of this briefing. The Republican Party of Arkansas made some big moves over the weekend at their state committee meeting. Members voted to ban registered Democrats in Arkansas from voting in the Republican primary election. So basically, they would be closing the primary, at least on the Republican side. So that means if you're registered as a Democrat in Arkansas, you will not be given a Republican ballot in the primary election if you request one. Now, this is not new. This comes full circle from last year's state convention, where this issue actually came up. There was a voice vote, and that voice vote passed to close the election on the Republican side. But the party's executive committee later voted to declare that that voice vote was null and void. As one might imagine, that angered the Republicans who were part of that effort. They filed a lawsuit in federal court to overturn the executive committee's decision, and that lawsuit got thrown out. The judge said that federal court was not the right venue for that complaint. So full circle, now what they were fighting for in the first place has been officially approved. So how would this work? Well, Arkansas currently has open primaries. It doesn't matter what party you're registered with, or even if you're registered with a party at all, you don't have to be in Arkansas. Any voter can go in during the primary election and request whatever ballot they want. This would stop that, at least on the Republican side, if you are registered as a Democrat. Some party members have some pretty serious concerns about this because the rule doesn't specify a time limit. So theoretically, someone who was registered as a Democrat a long time ago, but maybe is now a Republican, would still be banned from voting in their own primary. One Republican, his name was James Hines from Craighead County, he had this quote, "You know what we call people who used to vote Democrat but are now Republican in Arkansas? We call those the majority." And yeah, that's right. I mean, if you look historically at our voting patterns, Arkansas used to vote majority Democrat. Now it votes majority Republican. So there has been a lot of changeover. You do have a lot of Republicans and independents who used to be registered Democrats. So the party also set huge jumps in filing fees for Republican candidates in the 2026 primaries in some of those races. The governor's race is one of them, where the filing fee went from $15,000 to $40,000. That's more than doubling. And the U.S. Senate race filing fee did double from $20,000 to $40,000. Of course, that would be anyone facing Senator Tom Cotton. The filing fees for Lieutenant Governor and Attorney General doubled from $12,500 up to $25,000. And the U.S. House district fees, they actually stayed the same at $30,000. State legislative seats, state reps are $3,000. That's the same. And state Senate seats are $7,500. That is also the same. It is much cheaper to run as a Democrat in Arkansas, though you don't have as high a chance of winning in most places. Filing fees for running as a Democrat for U.S. Senate are $5,200, again, compared to $40,000, and $5,000 for governor compared to $40,000, and just a little over $1,000 for state Senate and $700 for state rep. So sticking with politics, the Arkansas Legislative Council on Friday opted not to spend almost $1 million with the Little Rock firm to help some state employees navigate this onerous federal program for student loan forgiveness. In a nutshell, the program would potentially benefit about 3,000 state employees by helping them figure out the federal public service student loan forgiveness program. Now, the Personnel Committee had recommended approval of this contract, and it was the third time that the contract had come before the Legislative Council. Representative Fran Cavanaugh and Representative Lane Jean, they are both huge budget hawks, and they're both term limited, so you know they are saying exactly what they think. They led the opposition to this. Representative Cavanaugh says she has no problem with state employees who want to use the program doing a payroll deduction to help pay for the program themselves.
At some point in this state, we have to stop spending like we have an unlimited amount of money. We do not. My constituents back home would never forgive me if I voted for this.
And Representative Jean was very clear. He said the state has to, quote, stop the spending, especially if legislators want to continue those state income tax cuts that have been enacted in the past few years. Interestingly, you had Republican Representative Aaron Pilkington and Democratic Senator Fred Love on the same side on this issue. They both spoke for the contract. They're both recipients of that forgiveness program, and they both attested to how difficult it was to work through the red tape on that program.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will tell you that something's going on because me and Representative Pilkington are on the same page.
But Senator Missy Irvin said a broken federal government program should not then become the burden of the state. Senator Breann Davis said that the money for the program would actually come from a fund that state employees pay into, and that interest on that fund would easily cover the contract. In the end, the vote wasn't even close. The noes overwhelmed the very few yeses that there were, but Senator Fred Love actually encouraged the agency to bring the issue back again for a fourth bite at the apple. So we'll see if that happens. Also during that meeting, the state authorized $90 million in funding to cover applications for the education freedom accounts. Now, this is money that was included in previous budgeting. This is not new money. And this money funds people that are opting into private schools or homeschooling for the upcoming school year. As you might recall, this is the first year that the LEARNS Act opened up this voucher program to anyone across Arkansas. So it's open season on getting these applications in and getting that funding. So far, there have been around 44,000 applicants for the EFA accounts for the school year coming up. About 28,000 of those have been for private schools and 16,000 have been for homeschools. Now, Senator Dodson asked if this $90 million wasn't approved, how many of those applicants would go unfunded? And the State Department of Education said that around 13,000 of those applications would not be able to be funded without this $90 million. The motion to pull the funding out for a separate vote, that failed, and the $90 million was loudly approved by members at the meeting. Okay, a few non-political items. So we've talked a few times about that horrific story from Saline County where the 15-year-old girl was killed by a pack of dogs at a private residence, not her residence, earlier in June. That attack, of course, is still under investigation, but Saline County is hosting a meeting tonight to talk about animal control in unincorporated areas like where this happened. Officials are saying the people who lived at the home where the girl was attacked were taking in dogs and attempting to be some sort of a dog rescue, but they weren't like an official shelter or anything like that. And neighbors previously said the girl was helping care for the animals because the animals appeared to be in such bad condition. Now, there is no shelter or animal control office in Saline County, and I'm guessing that's one of the things they're going to address in discussions tonight. And that meeting is set for 6 p.m. at Benton High School. And some stats for you if you have kids that are pretty scary. First, I'm going to define for you what this is. There's a thing called sextortion. Sextortion is where, I guess it can be any age, but it's primarily occurring to teenagers who are conned into sharing explicit images of themselves online, and then those images are used to blackmail them for money or other things. The stat that is so scary, cases of sextortion have risen more than 950% since 2020. So in 5 years, almost a 1,000% jump. In 2024, Arkansas State Police investigated 169 cases of sextortion in Arkansas. And so far this year, we're already over that. Like in half the year, we are at 170 cases of that happening. And in one case, this happened to a kid as young as 7 years old. The scammers, actually, you know what? Let's call them what they are. These criminals, these monsters, they demand payments of up to $500. And police say the kids and the parents shouldn't actually pay the criminals if you're a victim of this. You should report the crime to the social media company of any images that are actually posted. And of course, you should also report it to law enforcement. If you have trouble getting the photos taken down, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has a website called Take It Down that can help with that. So parents, watch your kids online. It's a very, very scary place. And lastly, you have got to listen to the free Arkansas podcast we uploaded this week with Dr. Robert Morato from the University of Arkansas. He recently released a book about the lack of free inquiry and freedom of speech and overabundance of groupthink, primarily in academia, but just in our culture in general. It was amazing, and he didn't hold back at all.
COVID, you saw this. If you said, gosh, and I did this, schools in Europe are reopening in spring of 2020 and in fall of 2020, the virtual all reopen in Europe. And it's not spiking the COVID cases. What can we learn from this? If you were to bring this up, people would say you're a murderer, you're this, you're that. So people weren't bringing it up. The lack of free speech is crippling our legitimacy with the American people. It's also crippling our ability to solve problems.
We put that up on YouTube today. Definitely want to check that out. Thank you to Dr. Morato for doing it and for just generally being awesome. So that is your Monday afternoon briefing. Hope you have a great week this week, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow.